It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. Next up, Paul Reiser. He's a legendary stand-up comedian. Alongside Helen Hunt, he starred on the sitcom Mad About You, which he also co-created. He's been acting a lot lately. He's on Amazon's Red Oaks. He's on the second season of Stranger Things. He was also in Whiplash. He's also the creator of a brand new TV show. It's called There's Johnny, and it's premiering this week on Hulu. The show takes place in the early 70s, and it's set behind the scenes at Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. It follows Andy, played by Ian Nelson, as a fresh-off-the-bus kid who gets a job on the show. In this clip from the pilot, Andy decides to write a letter to Johnny Carson asking for an autographed photo for his parents, and he kind of gets caught up in the spirit, and he also asks for a job. He gets the autographed photo back and a letter that he thinks is an invitation to come work on the show. So just like anyone would, he packs his bags, kisses his parents goodbye, and hops the bus from Nebraska to Los Angeles.
Can I help?
Tonight Show, please.
You want to see the Tonight Show?
Yes, sir. I have this letter here.
You know what time it is?
Sure. It's 5 to 11.
Right.
Right.
It's 11 o'clock at night.
Yes.
Yes!
Oh, well, I know the show doesn't start till 11:30, but I figured I would get here a little bit early.
Are you yanking my chain?
Am I what?
The show starts at 11:30 on television.
Right.
They don't make it at 11:30. They make it at 5:30. So there's nobody here but me and you and maybe a raccoon.
Paul Reiser, welcome to Bullseye. I'm happy to have you on the show.
Thank you.
You appeared on the Tonight Show in a polyester suit, at least it looked like, your first time around.
Now you're hurting me. You're hurting me with the fashion. Was it a polyester? There might have been some polyester involved. Yes, I was. Once in a while, somebody will post that or I'll come across that clip and I cringe because I look like I'm 7 years old and my style is so, not only is it so long ago that my style has changed, but on that night, it's the biggest thing in the world for a young comic to get on the Tonight Show. And I think I was so deliberately slowing myself down to not race that I'm almost like running, like I'm stuck in maple syrup. It was so slow. I went, man, I was either in some alternate universe or I was wildly overcompensating. But I like to think we're funnier now.
Let's take a listen.
Oh, no, really? Why?
I was visiting my parents recently. Do you know my folks? No. All right. My father, this is absolutely true. My father he has a new hobby now. He's got a winter hobby that he enjoys. It's called walking around the house and shutting off the heat for no reason. The man shuts off heat. It's freezing, but see, he really believes that if he cuts down his oil bills, then starting tomorrow, America's going to stop importing from the Middle East. It's a great sentiment. It's a nice responsibility. I don't know if one person is going to turn around the economy. I don't think the Prince of Saudi Arabia is up in his office going, well, I don't believe this. It's that same guy in New Jersey again. This is unbelievable.
Wow.
I feel like for an entire generation, or actually multiple generations of comics, Johnny Carson was like withholding comedy dad. Like he has this quality, a very rare quality for a broadcaster of being both withholding and warm at the same time.
I never found him withholding. It's funny. I did it a lot. I think it was something like 25 times from like 80. The first time I did that was 82, and then I didn't do it for a while till 86 to 90. And then somewhere in there, he just took a shine to me, and I was on seemingly pretty often, like every 3 months or so, which is a lot. And the first time I did stand-up, but the second, and then from then on, I only sat on the couch and did material. So it was a different kind of vibe. You didn't have to quite perform it. And the great advantage to that is you're playing tennis with Johnny. So you hit a stumbling block. He asks a question. He would help you along. And part of what made him so singularly great at that and really set the gold standard, he knew when to help, how to help. Sometimes he'd help by jumping in. Sometimes he'd help by staying back. There were times that I looked at a thing, I saw him very subtly reposition his body so that his hand would be close to mine because he knew I needed to touch him for the joke. It's whatever it was, he was there.
I feel like the difference that I hear in the way that people talk about going on late night in the 25 years since Johnny Carson retired and before that is that, with the possible exception of Letterman to some extent, I would say that, when I talk to a comic, the first time I went on The Tonight Show with Leno or whatever, or Fallon, I went on, I did well, it was great. When you hear people talk about going on The Tonight Show with Carson, certainly the stakes are higher because there's less on television and everyone watched the show and it was the only outlet for comedy in the world, basically. That kind of comedy in the
Absolutely.
world. But the difference is those people always seem to talk about Johnny Carson in terms of their goal was whether Johnny Carson liked it. Like,
yes,
that is the rest of the fact that tens of millions of people are watching at home or there's an audience in the studio. Like, people seem to care. Did Johnny like it?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, one of the great joys of doing this show that we just did for Hulu, There's Johnny, is
good work.
It was
always say the title.
Always say the title, but there is such a deep well of affection for Johnny Carson, and a lot of it I think is because it's been a while, and so we miss him. It's all the more so, but women, men, older guys, and there was a fondness, and he was comforting.
Speaking of the absence of irony, I have a clip of
Is it ironic?
You on The Tonight Show.
You're killing me now.
This is the late 80s. And
I don't like any. This is like pulling up high school pictures. Like, oh man, look at that shirt.
Well, you're going to be excited to hear that you're talking about airplane travel.
I think this is the bit I was referencing. Let me hear it.
It's you being stuck on a plane next to a too talkative passenger.
I get stymied by simple questions. The guy says to me, he says, "Is it going to rain today?" And I think like I should know that. And I feel bad that I don't know that. I said, "Well, I couldn't tell you. Why don't you ask somebody else?" Like, wouldn't he be scared if I did know? Wouldn't that be frightening? Yeah. You're sitting next to the guy who knows when it rains. It's like, 3:30 to 3:45. Keep it to yourself. And by the way, that car trip you're taking next week, don't do it. I just feel crazy about you. And then see, there are people who can do it. Anybody can sit here.
No, I'm not particularly good when on a plane with strangers. No.
Well,
you get trapped in that nothing conversation.
Exactly.
But the guy says, "Great day to fly." Good day.
But these are the same kind of people who I think, just because you're sitting next to each other, you should be friends. This is the same people who on the road will honk their horn because they have the same car, That's like that's a base of a very solid friendship. You're driving around, hey, Chevy!
Wow.
I like that, what is that, 30 years ago almost, you are already building chunks of your act around not wanting to make friends with people.
Well, here's the thing that chills me a little bit. When I look at old clips, I go, I'm doing the same things irritate me. And I was like, I was doing a bit about technology, and I found a bit of the first time I got a computer. I thought, well, I'm still doing computer bits, but it's different. But I haven't really become any more comfortable. And yes, I don't like people talking to me. Yes, so I'm nothing if not consistent. The things that bother me, it amuses me to see that I'm. Yes, that early on, I already didn't enjoy people.
I like that I feel like
I like you, don't get me wrong.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Paul. And I like you and your new show, There's Johnny, on Hulu.
Yeah.
I feel like Mad About You was, in a way, about the dance of irritation in the context of loving romance.
Yeah.
The Paul Reiser show was about the dance of irritation in the kind of ad hoc friendships that
yes.
parenthood drives you into.
Yes. God bless you for having seen that show, because 14 people did.
Well, I'll watch anything with my favorite comic actor in it, Andy Daly.
Yeah. But, to me, the struggle, and Mad About You was certainly about the struggle, and yes, find the irritation. Somebody years ago said, all the take my wife please jokes and all that whole generation. nobody has a joke that starts, "My wife is such a good cook." It's just not going to be funny. So comedy, by definition, is going to be about the irritants and the friction. But Mad About You is very clearly from the outset aiming higher. It's like this is a couple who really wants to get this right, and that's sort of the prerequisite for a relationship, and that's what you can never lose sight of, because it will get bumpy and you are two different people and you try and become as one, but you're never quite as one. You're a team. So, and I think that's ultimately what people responded to. And I still hear it today, that the warmth that people who enjoyed Mad About You is, A, they related to it and they saw themselves in it, and we would try to be very realistic. But at the core, you're watching a couple who is clearly well-intended. They're trying to not let the normal things that come up kill their romance, and it takes elbow grease, it takes vigilance, and they never really stopped. So that was a rich thing, and I think even in my stand-up, the things that irritate me are only because they're on the way to what would have been a higher goal. I really would like to be a better person, but man, that guy is irritating me.
I think the reason,
and I don't like the way I handled it.
I think the reason Mad About You in particular is a romance and not a family comedy, a traditional family sitcom, is that ultimately every episode is about them wanting to be in this relationship and wanting to have love, rather than the kind of well-worn grooves of a traditional family sitcom, which are about everyone is in this position. Like which is great. It can be really hilarious, but often those shows are about kind of reenacting a ritual conflict.
Yeah, we worked
about
hard,
character types.
Yes, and we worked diligently to avoid the well-worn grooves, and sometimes we'd write it and go, "Yeah, that's a good laugh, but I don't like what it says about him. I don't like what it says about her." And I think there are a bunch of reasons that the show succeeded. One, and I bury the lead there. The spectacular talents of Helen Hunt, who was a great actress and really funny, really deeply smart and funny. And one of the other things that we strived to do was we didn't make him always the nut and her always the Rob, or vice versa. And it was alternating, and sometimes in the same episode, in the same scene. It's like, okay, here's his little bag of craziness, and here's her little buttons, and you try and alternate.
Let's hear a scene from Mad About You, the sitcom that my guest Paul Reiser co-created. This is from the first season of the show. Jamie, which is Helen Hunt's character, is asking Paul, who's Paul Reiser's character, if she's seen her missing sock.
Have you seen my other sock?
What's it look like?
Remarkably like this one. It's gone. It's missing.
Well, it's a sock. Where could it go? To the kitchen. Very often they get hungry.
Looked everywhere else. Check the cupboards.
For your sock?
Yes, I'm looking for a sock. You figured out the game. Now help me play.
Here's a thought. Put on another pair of socks.
These are my lucky socks.
Well, it looks like your luck has changed, babe.
I think that, the 90s were such an interesting transitional period for the sitcom as a form, where you went from, kind of the apotheosis of how many great jokes can we put in a show sitcoms like Cheers, which I think is probably the last truly great how many great jokes can we put in a show sitcom, with 1,000, a cast of 1,000 brilliant character actors doing a hilarious thing, and you love them all, and it's your family, and everyone caps everyone else's joke. And the other shows that I think of that I loved, and when Mad About You came on TV, I was a pre-adolescent, and when it was done, I was a teen.
Oh, really? And you were watching it then?
Yeah, sure.
Really?
I mean, it was just I didn't have cable.
I had no choice.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy it.
I did enjoy it, but like if I watch Seinfeld now, what Seinfeld did is they took a pretty straightforward sitcom formula and like operatized it, right?
Yes.
Like took the smallest possible stakes and expanded them into the largest possible stakes. Just took the dumbest thing in the world, a phrase, tiny idea, and just exploded it into the most important thing in the world until it's the silliest opera you could imagine. And I, in the 90s, I really loved news radio, which as I watch it now is a really traditional sitcom in a lot of ways that is just a little sillier and with better jokes than most, And the thing that's interesting to me about Mad About You is I feel like the innovation of the form is you watch the show now 25 years later and it feels like a sitcom in a lot of ways. I mean, you were saying like it feels a little sitcom-y, just jokey, but the emotional stakes are not abstract with your two lead characters.
Yeah.
Like those two lead characters are having a relationship that feels real in a way that most sitcoms
and
that
was the only intention. The kickoff was, because I was approached at the time by like, go write come up with a show for yourself, and I thought, well, I don't know if I want to do a sitcom. I thought, well, if I did, I would want to do it about the stuff that I was doing in my act, which was relationship stuff, and that I found that interesting, and. So, sometimes you just stumble into something. You go, oh, yeah, this is I'm getting bigger laughs for a reason. This is coming from an organic place. So I'm going to do a bit, and this is probably true for everybody. If you do a bit about real people and relationships and your wife or your kid, or anything, it's going to be funnier than the best, traffic joke. Or boy, L.A. is different than New York, which is the trope of 40 years ago. But it was always about what's
it's always
the
trope.
It's always the trope.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I actually love jokes, like really story jokes, and I love hearing them and I love telling them. But I never write that way, and we would, and if something sounded too jokey, we would either lose it or find another way to leaven it that it didn't sound. In bad television, some people would just throw funny lines, and the other person it would land on them, and the audience would laugh, and they would just have to sit there and then they'd wait, and then they'd throw another one back. But in real life, if somebody said that to you, you'd go, "Hey, pal," like it hurts. So like, well, let's write that. Like, what are you doing? Why would you say that? But having said that, I've watched some Mad About You, and I think, oh my goodness, I forgot how funny they were. It's not. It was never. We wanted to always be funny, but it was at the core. It was about something that was important. But I think certainly, well, even in the beginning of Mad About You, but certainly towards the end, some of our biggest laughs that I was most proud of were silent. They were on a look because think of All in the Family. Edith would say something and Archie would look at her, and because you've watched 100 episodes, you know what he's thinking, and you know what he's going to say. And in our show, in Mad About You, it was that, but it was also, we were rooting. It's like, if the husband says that, the wife is getting ready to say the next thing. And those silences, we had a great run where we would go to therapy. We'd go to couples therapy. And Mo Gaffney, who was terrifically funny, was our therapist. And it was this great triangle of comedy where she would say something and one of us would, and respond to it, and that would, by definition, be burying the other one. Yeah, well, sometimes Paul does this, and I would look at her like, whoa, and then the look would get the laugh, or I would say something and Helen would just go, really, you're gonna, that's what you're gonna say? It's like, it's not a joke, but it's funny because we're taking the ride with these people and we know what's going on in their lives.
To have an extraordinarily successful network sitcom, which you did, you were both the star of it and the co-creator. You make a nearly infinite amount of money, and so you are then freed of the thing that drives a lot of us in our work, which is a continuing terror of penury, that we're going to be broke or something, right?
Yeah.
And so did you then come to a part in your life where you had to decide, like, wait, now I have to decide what I want to do?
Well, it's funny. That was the gist of my short-lived show, the Paul Reiser show. So I had a really big hit show, and I made, a very comfortable amount of money that I don't have to worry about that. And the log line that I said accidentally, which became the pitch, was when you realize you've gotten everything you've ever wanted in life and you're not dead yet. Like, I didn't time this well, because you want to get there right at the end, ta-da. And I'm like, well, I'm still relatively young and healthy. What's Act Two? And so I became, my name on the show was me, and I was writing what was happening for me at the time, which was all my male friends were not of my choosing.
So when that didn't work, I mean, they aired 2 episodes.
They aired 2, we made 7.
Yeah. So when that wasn't I'm sure that wasn't what you had hoped for the show.
No, I said 2 and out.
Okay.
I said the last 5 I'm going to shoot, but for God's sake, don't air them. Maybe that was my mistake.
When that didn't work, did you have to take another reconsideration? Because it feels like that was what, 6 or 7 years ago?
Yeah, something.
Maybe. And it seems like in the last 3 or 4 years, you've worked a lot as an actor.
Yeah. At the time, what I did is interesting, and I can't quite get up high enough to see the forces at play here. But at the time, I said, you know what? I don't want to have another pitch meeting. I don't want to sell anything. It's just too irritating. And I just said, I'm going to go back into the clubs and do stand-up, because I had always meant to do that. Well, when Mad About You started, I just got busy and I didn't do stand-up, and I didn't do it for all the time of Mad About You. So now it's 7 years. Then I was home for a while. So now it's 10, 12, 15 years. I went, oh my goodness, I haven't really been out there as a stand-up. It was always my goal, but I just kept waiting for a right time. I went, well, just do it. And so, in fact, I did it just as like going for a walk. It's like, I got to clear my head. I want to do this. And it wasn't a career thing. But the irony was, I spent about a year just getting my muscle back, because it had really gone lax. And I started feeling confident, like, oh, this is good. And I started to book some dates, and I go out on the road. And literally when I did that, these other lovely jobs, acting jobs, came in, sort of cosmically, synchronicity-wise, they were inexplicable, because it wasn't like we saw him on stage and he'd be funny. There was no connection. I was off the map. But something happened the minute I sort of shook off the dust and started doing what I wanted to do. Things sort of like the universe opened up in this strange way. And yes, I had this lucky, very fortunate position where I didn't have to do anything. And I only went where there was something appealing.
Well, Paul, we've run out the clock. I appreciate you taking.
I got more stories. I got more. Hey, where are they grabbing me? It's embarrassing how readily I can talk about myself. And at home, I can't do this. That's why I have to come here and talk to you.
You should become a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, we're in a little booth that people can't see. We're in a booth that's 6 feet by 6 feet. It's like Guantanamo, but not quite as nice.
Well, yeah, I mean, and at this point, it's getting pretty Cool Hand Luke in here. Like the temperature is rising. And
also, I'm eating 24 hard-boiled eggs. In case you were wondering what that order was. Man, pleasure. Thank you for knowing. And sometimes you meet people and they go, "I've never seen that show. What is it about?" I go, "Oh, all right." But thank you for your literacy in the world of moi.
Paul Reiser, everybody. There's Johnny premieres on Hulu Thursday, November 16th. You can check it out there. Also, Paul is terrific in Red Oaks, a kind of coming-of-age comedy that's on Amazon. I really like that one. Season 3 of that show just premiered. And you can find him on Stranger Things, portraying a character that apparently, in the script, was originally called Dr. Paul Reiser. That was before they cast him.